afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank Mayor Wayne Lee for having us here in this wonderful city of Millbrae.
Thank you for coming.
And I want to thank John Thomas from our hospital, San Mateo County Medical Center, for being here, and obviously all our law enforcement partners that are here with us today. As we all know, human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. It involves controlling a person through force, fraud, or coercion to exploit the victim for forced labor, sexual exploitation, or both. Victims often don't know where to go for help. Those who suspect human trafficking don't always know where to go to report it. Victims of human trafficking include children involved in sex trade, anyone coerced or deceived into prostitution, boys and girls, men and women forced into labor, such as domestic workers held in a home or farm workers forced to labor against their will. Trafficking in persons is huge and a tragic global industry. Human trafficking is estimated to cost $30 billion a year in global industry. The U.S. Department of State estimates that between 14,000 and 17,000 victims are trafficked into the United States each year. And that does not include those that are victims who are trafficked within our country each year. California itself is one of the nation's top 4 destination states for trafficking human beings. Young girls and women are 55% of the forced labor victims and 98% of sex trafficking victims. What we have learned is that people may come to our country seeking a better life, but then find themselves in a thrall of traffickers. They are forced into prostitution or to work unpaid in any number of industries to repay debts. They find themselves surrounded by an unfamiliar culture, an unfamiliar language, and without identification documents, fearing for their lives and for the lives of their families. San Mateo County is not immune to this global scourge. We will not turn a blind eye to the harm that is done to individuals and to families. The FBI has identified the Bay Area as one of the nation's top 13 spots for child sex trafficking. Victims of human trafficking often do not know where to turn for assistance and can be too intimidated to ask for help. So that's why we're here today. San Mateo County has joined Alameda County, San Francisco, and other public agencies in a regional effort to raise awareness about human trafficking and to provide a lifeline to victims. Senate Bill 1193 requires that certain businesses and establishments post a notice informing the public and the victims of human trafficking of telephone numbers hotline, which you see right here today. In San Mateo County, our posters are in English, Spanish, and Chinese. We are here today to help spread the word to the public and to the victims to let them know that help does exist. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Supervisor Don Horsley, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics about the poster and about the law. Don?
Well, thanks, Adrienne. Help does exist. In the coming weeks, the public will see these posters at establishments all affected by the law. This includes bars, adult or sexually oriented shops, airports, train stations, truck stops, bus stations, privately operated job recruitment centers, emergency rooms, farm labor contractors, and massage parlors. We have the support of obviously the police chiefs and the public officials from across the county, as well as the sheriff. Each business or establishment that falls under this law will be receiving a letter explaining the legal requirements and also the poster itself. These posters cannot be hidden. The law requires that a specified business or establishment must post the notice in a conspicuous place near the public entrance or in another conspicuous location in clear view of the public and employees where similar notices are customarily posted. Well, let me read what the notice says. If you or someone you know is being forced to engage in any activity and cannot leave, whether it is commercial sex, housework, farm work, construction, factory, retail, or restaurant work, or any other activity, call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center at 1-888-373-7888 or the California Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. And that's, again, it's at 1-888-KEY or KEY 2 FRE Freedom or 1-888-539-2373 to access help and services. Now, these hotlines are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Callers can be anonymous if they choose. The hotlines are accessible in more than 160 languages. Callers can find help, referral to services, and other information. What's also important to know is that victims or people with knowledge of trafficking can text, and this is called Be Free, which is actually 233-733, and specialists will respond via text. This could include immediately crisis response, referrals to nearby shelters, and emotional support. The law creates civil penalties for a business or establishment that fails to comply with the posting requirements. The penalty for violating this law is $500 for the first offense and $1,000 for each subsequent offense. So what's important to remember is that this is a regional effort. For your own poster, you can visit bahc2freedom.org to find out more about our regional efforts and to print your own poster. And one thing I want to point out is that 80% of the victims of human trafficking are actually U.S. citizens.
Good afternoon, I'm Sheriff Greg Monks, and I'm here representing the San Mateo County Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. It is our hope that this toll-free number will result in lives being saved from the oppression of human trafficking. This group of chiefs and law enforcement professionals behind me stand ready to investigate any and all allegations of human trafficking that are reported to the hotline. We will work very closely with our law enforcement partners from throughout the Bay Area, as this is a regional problem that requires regional solutions. The message that we want to get out today is that there's a way out for the victims of human traffickers. If you are a victim, a witness, or a concerned citizen, we urge you to pick up the phone and call this hotline. Help is available 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. As of today, we will distribute these posters to all jurisdictions in this county. All of us will have our personnel deliver them to all the locations in our respective areas that are mandated by SB 1193 to display them. These posters will be accompanied by a letter that explains what human trafficking is and that the displaying of these posters is mandated by law. We won't stop there. We plan to conduct periodic compliance checks to ensure these posters stay visible and are always there for victims and witnesses and the general public so that we can keep this important issue as a priority for our community. These posters also serve as a warning to those who engage in the illegal business of human trafficking that there is nowhere to hide. We have a unified community ready to report the crime and a unified criminal justice community ready to respond. I'd now like to introduce the District Attorney of San Mateo County, Steve WAGSTAFFE.
People will often say, is there human trafficking in a place like San Mateo County, a community such as ours? And the answer is, there's human trafficking in all of the 58 counties in the state of California. Is it in San Mateo County? Right now, we're prosecuting 2 cases that serve as an example of what's in San Mateo County. Back in early 2013, an investigation done up in South San Francisco by the police department there resulted in the arrest of 3 people for human trafficking. They had 5 young women that they were keeping basically in bondage. They really were slaves, taking advantage, taking all their money, beating them when they tried to resist. All 5 of those young women are now in our witness protection program, and those 3 people are facing serious felony charges under the human trafficking law. More recently, in October, November of 2013, there were 2 individuals, a man and a woman, who were also engaged in human trafficking of a young woman, beating her, threatening her if she did not participate in sex, giving them all the profits, that they would kill her family. They beat her. They kept her under total bondage. It's no different than what they say. It's modern-day slavery. That's in San Mateo County, and there are more cases. That last case was investigated by a task force from here, including Burlingame, Millbrae, San Bruno, South San Francisco Sheriff's Office officers. That first one I mentioned, do you know how it came to light out of South San Francisco? Because the police department had trained the motel clerk and many other clerks on what to look for. They notified the police, and we found it. So law enforcement is unified, as the sheriff says, in coming up with a concentrated effort to stop this. Now, Supervisor Horsley mentioned to you that there is a punishment for that. if one doesn't keep these posters prominently displayed so that people can know and we can try and save lives. The prosecuting agency, the group that will handle that, is the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office in this county by that law. And as the sheriff said, in terms of wanting to enforce it, we want the same. It's not a law to be ignored. There's a very valid purpose to it. So that is what matters to us. That is what we are interested in doing. And as Supervisor Horsley said a moment ago, where these young women, the victims of this slavery, are from, those two cases I just mentioned to you, the 6 young women, every single one of them is a California resident. These are not from some stereotype from some other land. It's in our community. It's important for us to stop it. And I'm glad that there's this coalition of people who will work together to make sure it is. And we're looking to the public by the display of these posters to help us do that. Thank you.
Thanks, and they'll take some questions now.
How long will the posters be up for? Is there like a time duration you have to this campaign?
It's the posters are up indefinitely. They'll be always unposted. They can't. There's no sunset on this. Any other questions? Thanks for coming. Yeah, yeah.
As far as prosecuting those who don't abide by the bill and display the signs, what kind of punishment are they looking at?
It's a fine of $500 the first time and $1,000 the second time for not posting it.
Hi, Mark Naismith from Penn TV here. I'm here with John Keene, who is the head of San Mateo County Probation Department. And John, we just heard some very compelling information and presentations from leaders in the county about human trafficking, probably not a well-publicized thing, but a very important thing that's a growing concern in the county. Give us your perspective.
You know, I think, quite frankly, today marks, I think, the beginning of a much broader conversation around this issue. One of the things I think that the district attorney highlighted, which is really true, we tend to think of this as a stereotypical thing that only impacts people from other countries. But over 95% of the people who are trafficked in this country are citizens of this country. And what probation feels in terms of our presence here, we're also looking at the idea that many of these are child sex workers who we come across. We don't necessarily know how to treat them. Oftentimes they're unfairly portrayed as perpetrators when they really should be looked at as victims. So today is a really, really historic day for this county.
Well, it's good to get your perspective, and it's kind of interesting to us that we're doing this at the combined Caltrain BART station, which I would make a guess would be a prominent point to intercept people who potentially could get pulled into this unfortunate, I don't want to say line of work, but for lack of a better term.
You know what, I think your perspective is right on point. Oftentimes, many of the people that we look at who get involved in this unfortunate endeavor are runaways, people who are transient in between leaving one space, coming to another place, just looking for a better life. And there are victimizers who linger in these very parking lots looking for people who seem lost and seem bewildered. And quite frankly, they're predators. And you wouldn't imagine that a train station would be a place where predators lurk, but honestly, they do.
Yeah. One last thing, John. You know, we talked a lot about businesses being involved in this and being aware and putting up posters. What can we, as public citizens, do about this? How can we become more aware of it? And how might we be able to take some action on something that's a very serious circumstance?
I think for the public, the most important thing is for the public to be vigilant, and when they see things, not to simply shrug it off, to make their local police departments aware. You know, most of the best tips that we've had in solving crimes have come from the public, and so when they see things, don't simply ignore it. And then in the bigger perspective, when we look to bring these victims back into our community, people do better when they know the community is supporting them. And so we implore our citizens to be mindful of some of the hardships that the victims have experienced and to help us bring them back into the fold.
Well, thanks for your time, and just as much thanks for your commitment and your colleagues' commitment to something that is a very serious piece of business that we all need to be more aware of.
Thank you very much.